Hi, and welcome to today's Q&A segment of pianoTV. I've had a couple questions lately from a couple different people about how phrasing works, so I figured I'd just do a short video about the topic. So, as always, if you have any other questions that you want to ask, just feel free to ask in the comments and I will try to answer them as best as I can. So to start, let's cover some basic definitions. So we've got some slurs in this song. So basically what a slur means is to play legato, or in English that just means to play smooth and connected. So that's like basic slur, all that means. But phrasing is also represented by these slurs, but in sort of more of a macrocosm way. Phrasing goes beyond just playing the notes smooth. So the way I like to explain phrasing is by comparing it to written language. When you read words, you don't just see each word as an individual unit. So when you read, you don't just read Jane goes to the store. You kind of see the whole group and then you piece it together word by word. Jane goes to the store. But your eyes tend to scan ahead and look at the entire sentence. So the larger structure, absorbing entire sentences or, up to commas at an entire time. It works just like that in music as well. So you want to, again, think of phrases as sentences or parts of sentences. So maybe at the end of this phrase in the right hand is like there could be a comma. Whoops, there could be a comma. And then at the end of maybe this phrase, it's like a period. Or maybe at the end of this phrase, it's like a period. So when you read music, of course you have to read the notes one by one, C, D, C, B, A, etc. But just like writing, your eyes tend to scan to the larger structure of the piece. So even though you tend to read note by note, your eyes do kind of jump ahead to where that phrase ends. It makes it so that you have a sense of direction while you're playing and that you're not just playing this random and endless stream of notes here. You're working towards a goal, and that's basically to get to the end of a phrase or to the end of a sentence or to, your musical comma or whatever it might be. So think about your experience reading out loud from a book. So if there were no punctuation marks, you wouldn't have any indication on where to breathe. So even though you're reading one word at a time, your eyes kind of like jump ahead to where the commas and periods are, because that gives you a sense of like how long you have to extend yourself before you can take that breath. Otherwise, reading out loud or singing or anything that requires that kind of thing would be super stressful. So it applies to music as well. The phrases give us a sense of the beginning and middle and end and where you get a chance to breathe. So that's all well and good from a theoretical standpoint, but what about actually interpreting phrasing on the piano? So basically you want to give the impression of a breath between phrase breaks, because if you're reading something, like if you're reading a sentence, you have to breathe when you get to those punctuation marks or else you're going to run out of breath and that would be bad. So you don't necessarily want to just physically stop and pause at a phrase break because that would create rhythmic inaccuracies. Exceptions to that might be at important cadences, but for the most part, you don't want to interrupt the rhythmic flow, but what you do want to do is lift the notes instead of, slurring these notes together with the next line and then slurring these notes together and just kind of creating one continuous phrase, or in language terms, creating a run-on sentence. So to really define those phrases, you want to physically lift up the sound. So make sure that you don't carry the slur through to the next slur. Another important aspect of phrasing is shaping the phrases. So let's go back to the language example. I don't know what it was, Jane something or other, but I'll do a longer sentence. So how about, the weather outside is snowy and cold. So there's our sentence. When you say it, it's not in a monotone all at one volume level. You're not saying the weather outside is snowy and cold with robot voice with no rises and falls in the volume level. What happens when you speak and when you say, entire sentences, there's going to be natural, subtle, but natural rises and falls in your voice. You want to think like this when you play phrases like this on piano. Think about creating a subtle shape instead of just a monotone, instead of da 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 da, instead of all the notes one after another. What you want to do is maybe you have a subtle crescendo or a subtle diminuendo, or even just a little bit of an acceleration or retardando, anything to, again, kind of like imitate spoken word or sung words, or, a sung line even, to give it shape so it's not just a flat line. So let's go to the piano to play around with these ideas a bit. So to do this, let's use one of our just kind of like common examples, Ode to Joy in the right hand, to think about phrasing. So the whole first 4 bars, I'll just play it for you. is just like one long phrase. So you could think that when you get to the part, that would kind of be your comma. So it's really important. I'm going to play past that phrase so you can hear that I'm giving it air in between. I'm lifting, kind of like I would breathe if I were singing it. So hopefully you heard that, and that's the whole idea behind phrasing. That's just a really simple example. Just to give like a little lift, a little bit of air into the song, so it's not so like heavy with a constant unislur situation. And then again, kind of like we were talking about, you want to have that sort of expressive, you want to have that movement. So instead of everything being really equal and really even, and it just ends up sounding kind of robotic, right? So think about like, where is the high point in that slur? Where is the low point? And maybe do like subtle crescendos. And I'm just going to give you an example of what I might do. I might crescendo to the middle and decrescendo to the last note of the phrase. So you can hear there's just like little rises and falls, just like the inflection in your voice when you speak. It doesn't have to be like super dramatic. Just make sure it's not robotic, and think about it before you do it too. Like if you were giving like a spoken presentation, you might think about the way your voice is sounding and how you might present the topic. You want to think the same way in piano. How are you going to convey those phrases in a convincing way? So my final thought on phrasing that I want to leave you with is this. It's a quote from the awesome composer Chopin. And he said to a student, "He who phrases incorrectly is like a man who does not understand the language he speaks." So keep this idea in your head when you're playing, and you'll find that your playing ends up being more expressive and beautiful. Thank you for watching this video. You can visit pianotv.net for updates and subscribe to this channel. Thank you, and toodaloo. Whoa. Whoa, sliding off the chair like a champ.